Alright, so today I got to talk about this story from the CBC, and it's growing numbers of newcomers and refugees ending up homeless in Canada, and this is entirely predictable if you ask someone like me, if you ask people like me that are skeptical of mass immigration, that in Canada, the U.S., Europe, we don't have the money to pay for what we currently have, let alone an extra 350,000 immigrants like Justin Trudeau and the Liberals want, like a lot of the Democrats in the U.S. want. And number one, it shows, it's just more evidence on top my and most people's idea that the left doesn't actually care about the refugees, about the immigrants. That's their reasoning for it, but they don't actually care. If they actually cared, they would have money and they would have housing for them, right? Like how people can justify in their head claiming to care about people by bringing them into your own country, and a lot of them ended up being homeless. Like, to me, that's some of the most backwards thinking I could possibly think of. If you really want to help these people, like we've been saying all along, you have to help them in their own country because, number one, because it's a lot cheaper to help them in their own country. I think you can help about 10 or 11, I think is the number, refugees in the Middle East by resettling them in safer countries in the Middle East rather than just bringing them here. So if you actually care about them, you would be doing that, but they don't. What they care about is, number one, virtue signaling. That's like when you're on the left about things that they care about, like the most important thing is virtue signaling. And number two, the politicians, they want them for the votes. These immigrants are going to come in. Immigrants from the third world generally vote 75, 80% of the time for the left. Give or take, depending on which country they're from and whatnot. But that's the main reason why the left wants them. Number one is the virtue signaling aspect, that Justin Trudeau can take selfies with all the immigrants and pretend how much he cares about them. And the left having a lot of trouble with winning elections nowadays. They need to basically cheat so then they can get more artificial votes. And not only that, they know that the immigrants from these third world countries have a lot more kids than the average white person in Canada or the U.S., which means down the road it's only going to be a numbers game before the right has a lot more trouble winning elections. So that's the main reason why they want them. I've made videos about that. I'll keep making videos about that because it's a very important issue. But as far as it comes to this topic, like where is the people that supported this stuff talking about how, yeah, we were wrong actually, we thought it would work but it didn't. Like, they're non-existent. And it's very sad for the refugees, but it's also not sad in another way, that just the fact that the left wants to cheat in elections and virtue signal that these people have to come and be homeless, like, that's very disappointing in my eyes. And it's not going to get any better because the cost of living in Canada is growing up at a pretty drastic rate. I'm not sure about the U.S. In the U.S. it all depends on where you live. If you live in small town America, it's probably not bad. But if you live in San Francisco or New York, it's skyrocketing. And Canada, it's somewhat similar, but Canada, I think even if you're in small towns, it's going up quite a bit too. So, let alone Toronto, Vancouver areas, it's off the charts there. But it's just like the thing I talked about also is that the left, they don't even understand the most basic of basic economics. That stuff that literally you learn like in the first week of your first economics course you take in college, which I know because I've taken them. You learn the basic laws of supply and demand. If you're going to drastically increase supply, you need to increase your demand, or the demand needs to come up with it. Basically, the example being, if you're going to drastically increase the population of a country, you need to drastically increase the housing availability in that country, which they didn't do. So basically what that did is it just drove up the cost of housing, especially in the big cities. And it's such a basic concept that we literally could be explaining to 10-year-olds could understand this stuff. The fact that the left either understands it and doesn't care and is just doing it for the votes and for the selfish reasons, or they literally don't understand, which I think a lot of the day-to-day voters of the left don't understand this stuff. which, like I said, considering that we could be explaining it to 10-year-olds and making perfect sense in schools, it just goes to show you just how smart a lot of these people on the left are. But that's about it. Like, it makes absolutely no sense that the leftist way of running a government is that, the government plans everything out and everything's run through the government, and they couldn't even do the most basic, easiest job they possibly could have with this. Is that, we're gonna increase refugees or immigrants by 100 to 200,000 a year on top of what was coming in under Harper, but they don't increase housing. I mean, one of the main reasons they do it is because we don't have any money. Like, if we had the money, they probably would have did it, but we don't have the money. So I don't want to rant too much on this issue, but this is just, these stories just keep coming out and keep coming out that just make the left look so much worse when it comes to these things. And yet, like I said, where are they claiming that, where's Justin Trudeau? Where's a lot of these immigrants, or these big immigrant supporters in Canada and the U.S. claiming that, yeah, we're wrong, we're bringing in too many people. But that's like people do now, and it's a basic psychological principle that when presented with counter evidence, people would rather just double down, and to me that's one of the best marks of intelligence and the ability to think critically is when you present someone with facts contradictory to their worldview if they recant. And the other problem with that, I guess, is that a lot of times you can come up with something that is a quote unquote fact to support pretty much every position. You have to look at the maybe the potential evidence they ignored to come to that position. Like for example, you can come up with examples that make the idea of increased gun control leading to decreased crime look very good. But to do that, you have to ignore, the classic example is the U.S. has very loose gun control. They have higher gun crime compared to Canada. Therefore, looser gun control means more crime. But what they ignore with that is that Canada's gun crime was no higher before the gun control than it is now. And the U.S.'s crime is down over the last 20, 30, 40 years compared to now, even though there's 100 million more guns in the country compared to the 20, 30, 40 years from now. So that's a basic example. But like I said, I've talked enough on this issue. If you like the video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more.